I've been fascinated by wilderness all my life. But my fascination of insects, particularly bees, is recent. When I moved to Bangalore in 2013, right away I noticed massive beehives on apartment balconies here. Given how honeybees are notorious in India, most people are either fearful or disgusted by them and treat them like pests. At some point, I made it my life's mission to learn more about these bees and persuade people to stop with the killings. This is the story of my journey. Let's start at the beginning. Meet Pranita. It is the month of October and it's the 5th year that bees have returned to her apartment.
This year particularly, I spent a lot of time observing this hive because it was locked down and we're working from home, and I pretty much used to sit here and work. It's very dense and very, very big this time. Not sure why it is though. When I saw it for the first time, the first year, it was set up here, and I suddenly see this huge hive in my balcony when I opened the curtains. And I did call somebody from the gate and have it removed. But then I saw it the year after, just there, and I just felt like, what makes them come back. And I have like so many balconies in the house. They come back to only this one.
వైసీపీ అధ్యక్షులు జగన్మోహన్ రెడ్డి పాదయాత్రపై తేనెటీగలు దాడి చేశాయి. పశ్చిమ గోదావరి జిల్లాలోని కానూరు క్రాస్ రోడ్డు దగ్గరకు పాదయాత్ర చేరుకోగానే ఒక్కసారిగా తేనెటీగలు చుట్టుముట్టాయి. జగన్ సెక్యూరిటీ సిబ్బంది వెంటనే అప్రమత్తమయ్యారు. వైసీపీ అధినేతకు తేనెటీగలు కుట్టకుండా జాగ్రత్తలు తీసుకునే ప్రయత్నం చేశారు. తమ చేతిలోని టవళ్లు, కండువాలు ఊపుతూ జగన్ చుట్టూ చేరారు. భద్రతా సిబ్బందితో పాటు కొందరు కార్యకర్తలకు కూడా.
In the winter of 2018, when I had just started my research on these bees, I heard about Venkat. In Bangalore, between October to March, you can see a lot of bee activity. Literally thousands of hives all over the city's high-rises. These hives are of Apis dorsata, or rock bees, a wild species of honeybee native to Asia. There is a lot of fear among people when it comes to dorsata. These bees are temperamental, they sting, they look disgusting, they are killer bees. This is the common perception. And then Venkat is called. Venkat is a professional beehive remover. He's one among hundreds operating in the city. But he's different in that he removes beehives without chemicals or fire, by cutting the hive and chasing the bees away.
அவங்களுக்கு இம்மிடியட்டாக எடுத்துடணும், அந்த பிளேஸ்க்கு இம்மிடியட்டாக எடுத்துடணும். என்ன மாதிரி பண்ணிக்க, நீங்கள் மருந்து கூட அடிச்சிரு, எனக்கு இம்மிடியட்டாக எடுத்துடணும். இப்போ நான் எடுக்கலைன்னு வச்சுக்க, அவங்க என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க, மருந்து அடிச்சிருவாங்க, மொத்தம் மருந்து அடித்து எல்லாம் கொண்டுடுவாங்க.
In the absence of any environmental regulations, honeybees are being exterminated in record numbers in Bangalore. I saw dorsata hives being sprayed with chemicals containing alethrin, generally used to kill mosquitoes and cockroaches. Spraying a hive with such toxic chemicals would eventually lead to the death of the workers, the brood, and the queen bee.
ப்ரெஸ் கண்ட்ரோல்னா என்ன தெரியுமா? ப்ரெஸ் கண்ட்ரோல்னா ஒரு கம்பெனி இருக்குதுன்னு வச்சுக்க, அந்த கம்பெனியில் எதனா பூச்சி அது இது கீழே அடிக்கிறதுக்கு தான், மருந்து அடிக்கிறதுக்கு தான் அவங்களுக்கு லைசன்ஸ் கொடுத்துருப்பாங்க. இந்த மாதிரி தேன் பூச்சியை அடித்து சாவடிக்கிறதுக்கெல்லாம் அவங்களுக்கு லைசன்ஸ் கொடுக்க மாட்டாங்க. பட் அது அவங்க ப்ரெஸ் கண்ட்ரோலுன்ட்டு இதே வச்சுன்னு அவங்க அதுக்கு யூஸ் பண்ணுறாங்க. இது அவங்க உள்ளே நைட்டோட நைட்டு மருந்து அடிச்சுட்டு காலையில் வேலை என்னமே க்ளீன் பண்ணிடுவாங்க. அது ஒன்றுமே கண்டுபிடிக்க முடியாது.
All across the world, our insects are declining in massive numbers. So they have predicted that about 75% of the mass, the biomass, meaning the weight of insects, has declined in the last 40 years. So imagine that we are a world of 8 billion people, and now there's 75% less. So there's about 2 billion. People would be going crazy. People would be running around, wondering how can we fix this? It would be considered an apocalypse.
I had started recording the number of beehives in my colony. Over 2 years, I found the number of returning bee colonies had reduced drastically. And yet, there were 1 or 2 locations where the bees would return. Pranita's was one. During the pandemic, Pranita was working from home and had more time to observe these bees from up close.
I set up my workspace in my bedroom, and where there was a very clear view of the beehive from my bedroom. And so this year, particularly in 2020, I could make a lot of observations. They set up the hive somewhere between September, October. That's what I have noticed in last few years, and they are there here till end of Feb, sometimes early March.
இது வந்து வருஷத்துக்கு ஒரு டைமு ஆட்டோமேட்டிக்காகவே எல்லாமே ஃபுல்லாக ஆட்டோமேட்டிக்காக பூச்சி வந்து குட்டி போட்டு நிறையா ரைஸ் ஆகிடும் ஒரே டைம். பில்டிங் ஹைட்டாக இருக்கு இல்லையா, அந்த மாதிரி பிளேஸுகளில் உட்காருது, இல்லைன்னா நிறையா வந்து மரத்துக்கள் உட்காரும். இப்போ பாரு மெட்ரோலாம் வந்துச்சு, இப்போ நிறைய மரங்கள்லாம் அவங்க கட் பண்ணிட்டாங்க. இப்போ வேறு வழி இல்லை, பில்டிங்கில் தான் உட்காந்தாங்க.
I noticed that this time of the year, Venkat's phone would ring non-stop with requests for beehive removal. Most of the calls he got were from high-rise apartments. Dorsata seemed to prefer taller buildings.
டெய்லி எனக்கு மேக்ஸிமம் ஒரு 10 பேருக்கு மேலே ஃபோன் பண்ணுவாங்க. பட் ஃபோன் பண்ணாலும் 10 பேரும் வந்து ஃபுல்லாக வந்து ஓகே ஆகாது. என்ன ஒரே ஆள் பண்ணோன்னா 2-3 எடுப்போம், இல்லைன்னா 2 பேர் 3 பேர் போனால் 5 வரைக்கும் எடுப்போம்.
I have seen Venkat remove 4 to 5 beehives at a time, often from a single location. If a single hive had 30,000 individuals, then Venkat alone displaced 15 billion bees from just one area. I calculated about 1,500 high-rise apartments in Bangalore. Even if half of those buildings had beehives, which are almost always removed using fire or chemicals, I get a mind-boggling number in front of me. I couldn't understand why dorsata kept coming back.
There can be 2 reasons. One would be that urbanization leads to a loss of natural nesting sites, cutting trees, cutting big trees. But it can also be the other way around, because in Asian cities, the preferred human building is a high-rise apartment building. And a high-rise apartment building is a cliff, is a rock.
Apis dorsata, they are called rock bees. They are the honeybee species with the largest colonies. It's open nesting that builds these big hives.
Apis dorsata colonies nest together. You see that at cliffs or mountains where they can have 20 or 30 colonies close to each other.
Here in cities like Bangalore, they are using high-rise building as artificial nesting sites.
In some sense, dorsata colonies on apartment balconies were similar to communal nesting in the wild. The apartments were like branches of a large tree, providing a firm and secure nesting habitat to the bees.
My name is Axel Brockmann. I'm an associate professor at the National Center for Biological Sciences in Bangalore. I'm working on honeybees and I've done this for 30 years. So my lab is not studying actually the threats to the pollinators, but we want to study the behavior that will then give us a chance maybe to suggest strategies to conserve them. For the conservation of honeybees and other pollinators, it is important to understand the behavior and the biology of these. So there are two parts. I mean, we want to understand how the world is working, but also we now are faced with the problem that we have to save the world. Apis dorsata colonies are hard to reach because they are nesting mainly 4 or 5 meters high in trees or buildings. So you actually have to reach there if you want to study them. If you look at the research publications, 90% of the publications are on Apis mellifera and only 10% of the Asian honeybees. So actually we don't know much about the behavior of Asian honeybees. In the last 10-15 years, as there has been reports about the decline of bees, and there are no data about the pollinators in Asia. And so we assume that there is a decline, but we actually have to start to study it. We did one study in a gated community where we observed the number of colonies each month. The first thing that we want to study is what is the annual life cycle of a colony in Bangalore? Yeah? When is it coming? When is it swarming? When it is actually increasing colony size? When is it leaving? There's some evidence that colonies come back to the same nesting site. So the colony that is nesting on your friend's balcony can be the same colony that was last year there, but it does not need to be.
இப்போ வந்து சில டைமில் ஒரு தேன் கூண்டு வருதுன்னு வச்சுக்க புதுசாக எங்கேயானந்து வெளியிலேருந்து வரோம் லாங்லேருந்து வரும்போது அதுக்கு வந்து அந்த பிளேஸ் தெரியும் ஆல்ரெடி இந்த இடத்துல வேற பூச்சி ஆல்ரெடி ஹனிபீஸ் உக்காந்துருக்கு இந்த இடத்துல இது சேப்பு அந்த இடம் அப்படின்ட்டு அதுக்குள்ளே ஒரு மைண்ட் செட் இருக்கும் நெக்ஸ்ட் வர்ற பூச்சிக்கு சடான்னு வந்து அதே பிளேஸில் கூட உக்காந்துரும் ஒரு 2 அடி 3 அடி டிஸ்டன்ஸு தான் டோட்டலாகவே அவ்வளோக்குள்ளே தான் உட்காரும் ஒரு 2 அடி 3 அடிக்குள்ளே அந்தான உட்காரும் இல்லை இந்தான உட்காரும் இல்லை சென்டரில் அப்படியே சேம் பிளேஸ்லேயே தான் உட்காரும் பட் அதுக்கு கீழே மேலே வந்து இடம் காலியாக இருந்தால் கூட அந்த பிளேஸ்க்கு போகாது.
With little else known about dorsata, I was beginning to assume that they were similar to bees found in other parts of the world.
Honeybees are social insects. If you're living in a social organization, what you can do is you divide the workload among the group members. All the workers are morphologically the same. You cannot tell them apart. But they might be occupied with different tasks. Taking care of the brood inside the nest, feeding the brood, and foraging for food. Foragers fly away from the colony, search for flowers, collect the food, bring the food back home, and deliver it to the food stores. Like in a family, someone goes to the supermarket and buys stuff and you store it in the kitchen. The forager is not searching for food alone. Searching for food and collecting food is a group activity. The colony needs a lot of food. The pollen is important for producing new workers. The honey is important for energy supply.
Dorsata builds only one comb. Most often, you can't see it because the comb is protected by a curtain of bees arranging themselves around the comb. All honeybees sting, and dorsata in particular are known for their volcanic temperament. Like all wild creatures, they attack only to protect the hive from predators, which an open nesting honeybee will have plenty of, like birds, other mammals. Inside the comb, there are cells containing the brood and the food stores, the nectar, honey, and pollen. Every colony has a queen, and the queen is the only one that's laying eggs.
The colony, in some sense, lives forever. You have to understand that a colony is basically a big family. There's the mother and the daughters. The mother is the queen and the daughters are the workers. The individual, the mother, does not live forever. It lives for 3 years. The workers live for several months. But if the queen dies, the daughters are producing a new queen. If workers die, the colony is constantly producing new workers. Challenges to the honeybees and other pollinators is, of course, pollution, pesticides, reducing of land. In India, another threat comes to the bees, and that is that the humans are actively killing them. And this is because they like to nest at high-rise buildings, and the residents of high-rise buildings certainly didn't pay the money for their apartment to buy a colony. They are afraid of them. They cannot use a balcony, so it's diminishing their living quality. They are allowed. There are no policy restrictions to kill honeybees in India, so they are calling pest management.
சரி, இப்போ வந்து சில இடத்துல வந்து சப்ஜால் கட்டியிருக்குன்னு வச்சுக்க அவுட்டரில். ஒரு சப்ஜாவில் வந்து ஒரு 1.5 அடி 2 அடிக்கு உள்ளே இருந்தாலும் கோணிப்பயல் கேட்ச் பண்ணிட்டு அதை எடுத்துன்னு போய் எங்கன்னா ஃபாரஸ்ட்டில் அந்த மாதிரி காலி இடத்துல விட்ருவோம். அதுக்கும் கொஞ்சம் ஒரு 5 அடி அப்படி உள்ளே இருந்துச்சுன்னு வச்சுக்க, ஒரு ஸ்டிக்கில் அதை வந்து கூண்டெல்லாம் தள்ளிடுவோம். கூண்டை தள்ளிடுச்சுன்னா அந்த ராணி பூச்சி வந்து மறுபடியும் அதே பிளேஸில் உட்காந்து ஒரு 2 days 3 days விட்டு ஆட்டோமேட்டிக்காக அதெல்லாம் இறந்து போயிடும், அந்த பிளேஸில் இருக்காது. சில டைமில் வந்து இம்மிடியட்டாக உக்காந்துருக்கும், ஒரு 10 minutes கூட இருக்காது, உடனே வந்து எடுத்துருங்க. அவங்க ஒரு 2 நாள் 3 நாள் பார்ப்பாங்க, அப்படி இல்லை ஆகிறதில்ல வரதில்லைன்னாங்கன்னா அது கூண்டெல்லாம் காலி ஆகட்டும் கொஞ்சம் அப்படின்னு சொன்னால் நீங்கள்லாம் அவங்க கேட்க மாட்டாங்க. அவங்க இம்மிடியட்டாக எடுத்தே ஆகணுன்றாங்க. நாங்கள் இந்த மாதிரி பூச்சை போய் கோணிப்பயல் கலெக்ட் பண்ணது தான் வழி, வேறு வழி இல்லை. நாங்கள் முடிஞ்ச வரைக்கும் இந்த கோணிப்பயல் கேட்ச் பண்ணிவிட்டு எடுத்துப்போ அங்கேருந்து சிட்டிலேருந்து எங்கேயோ கொஞ்சம் அவுட்டரில் அப்படி ரிலீஸ் பண்ணிட்டு வந்தோம்.
Venkat would bag the bees in a sack and travel to a wooded area to release them. And this needed to be done within a window period of 20 minutes. I noticed that 90% of the time, due to delays in his payment or poor traffic conditions, the bees would already be dead before he got there. The more I tried to understand dorsata behavior, the more I was drawn to the complex labyrinth these bees navigate. Each twist and turn they took to survive seemed like a gamble for their existence. And at any point, a species can lose and spiral into extinction.
I take my midday break around 10:30, 11, and there's a lot of movement. I wondered, I still couldn't figure out. I don't know if it is disturbance or it is work in progress or what it is. But they do have timings for that as well. So I have my cup of tea watching that. That's a very soothing break for me to just go and observe them between work and between calls. It's the closest, natural view for me that's actually moving, and just to get a fresh view for the eyes whilst you're staring at the computer. One of them will come and tap on the window. It just feels like it wants to come in, but
The bee's most important function is pollination. Yet managed pollination is often seen as a byproduct of honey production.
To understand, in a scenario where there is no pollination by the animals or insects, what quantum of agricultural produce will India lose? So we picked up about 7 or 8 kinds of crops which are hugely important economically for a country like ours. The estimate that we arrived at was a whooping, $760 million US dollar per year. So you can imagine the huge economic importance insect pollination has.
Indian agriculture, it is based on small farmers. You have small fields, and then you have all kind of the native pollinators flying around. No one owns it, no one counts them.
India is a country of small land holdings, where farmers have small acreages. There is a huge diversity of crops grown here, and I read reports that native bee species are important in pollinating up to 55% of crops in the country. The loss of insect life from the food chain would have direct consequences to the human food supply. What would its impact be then for a country that still accounts for a quarter of the world's hungry people? Coffee is the world's second most valuable commodity. India cultivates a huge amount of coffee. We are among the top 10 coffee growers in the world, and most of the coffee we grow is exported. Coffee is a popular beverage in India, particularly in South India, which alone consumes nearly 80,000 metric tons of coffee, which is about 78% of the total coffee consumed in India. Most of the coffee grown here is on tiny parcels of land by smallholders. In Coorg, a district in Karnataka, coffee is grown under the shade of tropical rainforests of the Western Ghats. The Western Ghats is home to nearly 6,000 insect species. And around 33% of the total coffee fruit set in Coorg is the contribution of insects.
The farmers in Kodagu, many of them, they were not aware as to what percentage of their coffee production was a contribution of bees.
Among the pollinators, insect pollinators, about 95% were bees, but then the most important visitor was Apis dorsata. In fact, close to 58% of the visitors were Apis dorsata.
Dorsata is a very important pollinator in most crop plants in India, and it's a migratory species. As they migrate, it's not just one landscape that is benefiting from their pollination services. They migrate every year, so it's probably more than one landscape which is benefiting from their pollination services.
In the Western Ghats, Apis dorsata is needed for pollinating of coffee. And at the moment, everyone is happy because the Apis dorsata colonies are coming by themselves, right? And everything is fine. The question is, if we now have a decline in Apis dorsata colonies in the future, will that have an impact on the coffee production?
Yeah, he's coming down slowly, but I just find it very risky to stand here because I'm pretty sure I'm very close to this, and the bees will if he starts if he can go down it's okay, but if he starts poking, yeah, the minute he comes down I'm going to stop, okay, before he starts poking it because it's risky.
At the start of filming, I was aware of the dangers of disturbing a dorsata beehive. I came from a position of fear and uncertainty about the temperament of these bees. No beehives were removed for the purpose of filming. We were merely following Venkat to locations that called for his service. He would cut the hive and chase away the bees. It seemed like a viable solution than dousing the bees with chemicals or using fire, which can result in the death of the queen bee, the most important and longest living member of a hive, carrying the hive's memory with her as she migrates from location to location with her brood. When dorsata migrates into urban landscape, they navigate a human ecosystem specifically designed for the evolutionary success of humans. Humans need homes, humans need electricity, humans need transport. And all of these needs interfere in varying degrees with other species that we live with.
Especially if you're talking about a bee like Apis dorsata, the giant Asian honeybee, moves its hives throughout the year, and it moves them. It's been found to move them into agricultural sites and out of agricultural sites. So whatever it's being exposed to in the city, it will carry it with it. We've been studying pollinators for the last 6 years, and we've done this very large study on how pollinators cope with different climate differences. And it was actually done both in Bangalore and in the Himalayas and even in Europe. And when we worked in Bangalore, actually, we didn't work in the city itself. We worked in the rural areas around the city. And that was because we really couldn't find a lot of pollinators in the city. There are butterflies and bees, and you will see them if you can't go outside. But there wasn't nearly as many as we found outside of the city. And that got us interested in what could it be? What could the reason be why we don't find as many pollinators? So when Geeta joined the lab, she wanted to work on this question.
When I started this project, I visited more than 15 sites in around Bangalore. One is rural site, moderately polluted site, highly polluted site, and then one is less polluted site. We were working on effect of air pollution on pollinators, and then in pollinators we selected Apis dorsata because Apis dorsatas are wild honeybees and they are native to Asia. So what we usually do is we go to the city and then we collect the bees, and then we come back to the lab and then we study on the effect of pollution on the body.
We didn't really know starting out what effects we would see. The insect's body, bees, but all insects, it's so different than ours, right? Number one, they don't have a backbone. They have an exoskeleton. They breathe through their bodies. We have lungs. There's so many things. They don't have veins. They have this open circulatory system so that they have blood, but the blood flows through their body in a very different way. And so we weren't sure how to start, but we thought, well, let's start with what we know. Humans. There's been thousands of studies done on how pollution affects humans, everything from our breathing to our circulation to our mental capacity. There's been studies that have shown that it even can have effects on learning and memory and other things as well, and certainly longevity. We were completely shocked that the insects were just covered in these particles, this debris. And what this actually is something called respiratory suspended particulate matter. So it was literally air pollution on their body.
We found the bees from highly polluted sites are not really sensitive enough to identify or sense the common floral volatiles. So it means something is happening to them. It is heart touching actually. It is a change in the physiology and the behavior of the bees. We observed toxic elements like lead, arsenic, tungsten, and we also studied heart rate of bees. The bees from highly polluted area showed difference in the heart rate pattern. We call it as cardiac arrhythmia. Either there will be very fast heart rate or there will be very slow heart rate. We have never observed this type of behavior or heart rate pattern in other bees.
The first initial reaction is, how can you let it grow so much? How can you let it be there? It's right next, next to your room, and you should get it removed. I would say it is more conditioning that I've been taught to say, stay away, it's not safe. During the daytime, there is absolutely no disturbance from either one of us to each other. There used to be a lot of them inside the house once it becomes dark and we turn on the lights.
In cities where we have a lot of artificial light sources, some nights might be light enough so that they can fly. When they are flying in the night, they get attracted by the light. So they are flying towards light sources. And this is one reason for the conflict between humans and Apis dorsata.
There are very few places on the earth today that don't have a glow from a nearby city. The impact of what is called artificial light at night, and the acronym is ALAN, A-L-A-N. This has become of huge concern because people are now realizing that it is affecting the physiology of pollinators. Nocturnal pollinators use a combination of scent and of vision. They use both in order to locate the target, the nocturnally blooming plant. So if your vision is being affected by too much light, this can definitely interfere with navigation, interfere with activity, interfere with when these bees are emerging in order to do their normal activity.
Although these bees are not aggressive, right? These are foragers, they want to go for food, but because they get caught in the light, the way they are flying is unpredictable. And the unpredictable flight trajectory kind of even makes humans more afraid of them.
A number of factors have caused insect declines in all parts of the world. Loss of habitat, introduction of invasive species, climate change, light pollution. All of these factors at different points in the last decades have contributed to this decline. But none have been more insidious than the cocktail of chemical weapons that we use in our fields to secure our food. India is one of the top producers of fruits and vegetables. But insect pests are often responsible for a loss of up to half of the crops produced. A significant loss to a small-scale farmer who relies on farm income for his survival. Consequently, the use of pesticides in agriculture has become fundamental to farming. Most fruits, vegetables, and edible oils that reach our homes have been treated with pesticides at some point. These pesticides are lethal to humans and pollinators alike.
Pollinators are unwitting targets of pesticide application. And as our study shows that it's a kind of a certain level of sublethal toxicity which is going on. In the honeybees, there are changes in their olfaction. They can't smell anymore. So something wrong with their brain chemistry. their sensory structure that receives the volatiles. Pollen that it collects. Yeah, pollen has heavy load of pesticide residue in it, right? The leaf, the flower petal surface it sits on has a layer of pesticide lying on it. So pesticide everywhere, people have, one can really count like in one's finger like how many routes of pesticide exposure a pollinator or a bee has in its lifetime. Pesticide exposure also affects the orientation behavior of the bees, honeybees. So imagine a forager, like it comes out of the colony, but is not able to come back home, right? So it's as good as death for her. They cannot discriminate between colors. So there is problem with their color recognition ability. So all these are affecting their biology in one way or the other. If their smelling ability is lost, it cannot find its way to a proper good food source. If they cannot recognize a good color, so that their foraging, their food utilization, resource utilization itself is affected.
About 6 months after the bees first appeared on Pranita's balcony, sometime in March, I got a distress call from her.
Yeah, I think something happened, and if you see that cone that's hanging, they're just hanging on to each other. It's not hanging to the comb. There's still a bunch that's just hanging on to each other, and they are gonna fall off too. And it's just, I'm watching them fall one after the other, and it's just very hard to see that. A lot of them are coming, going, and it's like, you threw something and they were just flying away, sort of a thing, It's just very quick.
Our picture about honeybees is dominated by what we know about the cavity nesting western honeybee. With the open nesting species like Apis dorsata, it is more dynamic. The species shows a higher degree of migratory behavior than we expected. The only study that came up with an estimation was in Sri Lanka, and these colleagues say that dorsata migrates about 150 to 200 kilometers. I think 200 kilometers is from Bangalore, the beginning Western Ghats.
Dorsata begin to leave their nesting sites even before the change in weather. The beehive on Pranita's balcony was empty the next morning. We didn't know what happened to the bees or where they went. I knew that birds migrate thousands of kilometers, sometimes across continents. Butterfly migration is also something I had read about. But for honeybees to migrate, even a limited range of distance was mind-boggling. Seasonal migration of dorsata is an innate response to the tropical climate of the region. It has evolved over tens and thousands of years with the monsoons. They were migrating within the city in search of food, and they were also migrating as an innate response to their biology. Where the dorsata migrate to, or what is the range of their migrations, is still a mystery. And I wanted to solve this mystery. I had heard about Devarakad, the sacred forests of Coorg. These ancient forests host dorsata bees between March and May. Without scientific evidence to back me up, I cannot claim that dorsata from Bangalore were migrating 200 kilometers to Coorg into the Western Ghats. Yet to me, it did not seem unlikely. Forests matter at a fundamental level more than we realize. Dorsata and other wild bee species are known to take refuge in forests while they come out to service croplands. In India, the dynamic between forests and cropland is a complicated matrix. There are croplands, small forests, and bigger forests. It's a mosaic that pollinators exploit to their advantage. But there was something else that was exciting me even more: to finally be able to see dorsata in their natural habitat, on the tall trees with white crowns that they prefer so much.
The maximum flowering in amongst the shade trees happen between February and May in terms of diversity and density. So there is a lot of forage in this landscape during that time. Forests play two roles. One is providing nesting sites, the second is forage itself. And it seems like Apis dorsata migrates into the landscape to benefit from the forage that is there. And it just so happens that coffee flowers in the middle of this resource-rich time within this landscape. Coorg is located within the Western Ghats biodiversity hotspot region. So in the past, a large part of this landscape was covered by forests, but the understory of the forests were cleared and coffee was planted. The sacred forests are repositories of the original forest that was there in this area. So what happens is the sacred groves and the coffee plantation at the canopy level, they are like contiguous forests even now. So there is still exchange of genetic matter across the sacred groves and the coffee plantations. Since the trees in the coffee plantations are heavily pruned to let in sun come in, to increase the productivity of coffee, there are not very many branches which are suitable for Apis dorsata in particular to nest. So they usually tend to nest in sacred forests where there are very large trees with very large crown horizontal branches. So it seemed like a very natural question to ask. Do these forests, which actually had lots of Apis dorsata colonies, help in providing pollination services to the surrounding coffee plantations? So once coffee is irrigated or it rains, 8 days after that there is flowering. So we come just 2 days prior to flowering, mark the branches which are quite visible because we are observing pollinators. We record all the visitors, the species and number of individuals visiting and number of flowers they visit. Our main study was to look at what pollinates and what is the extent of contribution of all the insect visitors. Of all the pollinators, bees contributed to about 95% of the total visits. The most important visitor was Apis dorsata. In fact, 58% of the visitors were Apis dorsata. So the contribution of bees to coffee fruit set in Kodagu is about a third of the total coffee yield. When a farmer knows that when instead of 2 bags of coffee, If I would get 3 bags of coffee because of bees, I would probably make an effort to conserve this species. And conserving the species, it also means conserving the forage and the nesting sites.
The Apis dorsata have a very high nesting fidelity. So they come back every year to the same tree. So this year, if I have 40 colonies in a forest on one particular tree, I could expect the same number the following year.
These colonies are migrating during the monsoon. So the colonies that are living in Bangalore might be important for pollination and some other places. And if we kill them here, then they are missed at the other place.
The Apis dorsata, they are extremely important in maintaining our biodiversity and extremely important for the resilience of forests. And forests provide various other ecosystem services such as carbon sequestration, water in particular, climate mitigation, nutrient cycling. So they are important not just for our food security, it's a wide range of other ecosystem services that we depend on.
Our forest patches are becoming fragmented. Forests are not magically regenerated. They are regenerated through seed. Seed is the product of pollination.
The loss of pollinators will have an impact on the plants, will have an impact on the animals that are kind of feeding on the plant products. The tigers that are eating these other animals will diminish because these animals are not there.
If the tiger represents the heart of forest conservation, wild bees are its sentinels, interacting between forest and man and adapting while it navigates between different ecosystems. For 2 years, I traveled alongside these bees, from the city to the fields and to the forest. I learned that the interdependence of creatures in any ecosystem is such that no one species is dispensable. And bees are at the noble center of the life force that binds food chains and life cycles of all species on this planet. But saving the bees would need a structural change. Regulating pesticide use, conserving or rebuilding habitats, creating species awareness, all of these can help. In the case of Apis dorsata, as city planners, what we can do is perhaps have regulations on how dorsata hives can and cannot be removed. Provide adequate training, gear, and licenses to beehive removers like Venkat. Have controls in place and ban removal of beehives that use fire or chemicals. As a community, we can nurture wild spaces in our neighborhood. The lakes, tall trees, and scrub jungles all provide habitat to wildlife that live right here among us. As individuals, we can learn to live in harmony with nature, as our own ultimate future depends on that understanding.